Okay, now let's turn to the United States. We did something like it. Mr. Tsipras likes to say that Syriza's just doing what FDR did. So I want to begin by again reminding you about a little history. This time it's our history, FDR. It's 1933. We've got a collapse of capitalism, worse even than the one we've had since 2008. It's really bad. 25% of our people are unemployed. Poverty is everywhere. You know, many of you read, I don't know, John Steinbeck, Grapes of Wrath, Mice or Men. Remember those descriptions? A lot of people were like that. A lot of people waited for the coal car to come by on the freight train because little bits of coal would fall off and the children would go and get them because they're the only way you keep warm, etc., 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 etc. Much good American literature was produced out of that misery. But something interesting happened. Again, Greece is an interesting example. The American people reacted to that misery, the collapse from the roaring 20s into the miserable 30s, by getting angry at rich people and at corporations, big time. Starting in 1933, millions of Americans who had never been in a union, who came from families where no one had ever been in a union, joined unions. It was the greatest organizing drive in American history. Unions have never achieved that before, and they've never achieved anything like it since. In a matter of 2 or 3 years, millions of Americans joined a union to save them from the horrors of the Depression. Working together with the unions, organizing, were 2 socialist parties, not just one, 2. A kind of reformist, middle-of-the-road one, and a what we now call Trotskyite one. The Socialist Party and the Socialist Workers' Party, for those of you who know your history. And also working with them was the American Communist Party. Big, powerful organizations, all of them. And the combination, wow. The communists, the socialists, and the CIO, it was called, the Movement to Organize Workers. That's where the AFL-CIO comes from, the CIO part. And they mobilized millions of Americans. And they went and talked with Roosevelt, and they had a conversation. Frank, they said, we here represent millions and millions of people. We like you, you're a Democrat, and compared to Republicans, we probably like any Democrat, but nonetheless, we like you, and we want to support you. But you've got to do something about the mass suffering of the American people. And we got to tell you in all honesty that if you don't, we got a lot of people who want to do here what those Russians did over in the Soviet Union. And this is 1933. The Soviet Revolution is a memory. It wasn't that long before that. And Roosevelt was a very smart politician. He knew they were not bluffing. They represented millions of people. They had done something that nobody expected them to do, organize all these industries. Go back, if you have a chance to go to a library and look at the cities across America that were scenes of worker demonstrations every day. Minneapolis and Philadelphia and Chicago and New York and Trenton and on and on and on. This was a scary time for business. So Roosevelt listened and he said, okay, I'm going to make you a deal. I'm going to go talk to the rich and the corporate leaders. Roosevelt knew them since he had gone to school with them, intermarried with them and all the rest. So these were friends of his. And I'll see what I can do. And he met with the businesses. And he said to the businesses, basically, I got to take care of all these poor people. And I advise you to help me, because the only way I can take care of them is if you give me the money. Because it's a depression. We don't have any money. Nobody's paying taxes. Everybody's unemployed. All the businesses are shut down. The government has no money, like today. So we have no money. The only way I can take care of the people is if you give me the money. And I advise you to do it. Because if you don't, those people are going to make sure you don't have any money to give me. It's going to be over. Half of them were not convinced at all. That's the forerunner of what we call today the Koch brothers. No, seriously, that's where that comes from. The other half agreed with Roosevelt. They were scared. With half of the business community and the rich in his pocket, he went back to the coalition of the CIO, the socialists, and the communists, and he said, okay, I got a deal. We can do business. I am going to get money from the rich and the corporations, and I'm going to help you. I'm going to do it. But you've got to promise me something. Stop talking about revolution. Put that away. If you keep doing that, I can't make a deal. I can't get the rich and the... That's the deal. And they all agreed. The CIO bought it, the socialists bought it, and the communists bought it. They said they didn't, and not all of them agreed, but they bought it. And what did Roosevelt do? Now you can see why Mr. Tsipras in Syriza is paying attention. 1933, let's go real fast. Roosevelt gets up and says, I'm going to create Social Security. What? In the middle of a depression when there's no money, you're about to tell everybody who's over 65, here's a check every month for the rest of your life. Yup, that's what he did. And before people could even deal with the enormity, we had no Social Security before that, he announced the unemployment compensation system. We had never had a program of giving money to people who are out of work for a year or two every week. The government had no money. It was the Great Depression. He said, I'm going to give the old people who are over 65 a check every month, and the unemployed, of whom there were millions, a check every week. I'm going to raise the minimum wage, which he did. In fact, he established the minimum wage. We didn't have one before that. I'm going to make a minimum wage, and he made it nice and high. In real terms, higher than it is now. But then came the big one, as if these weren't big enough. I, said the president, went on the radio, I am going to tell you, the American people, the following. If the private sector, he didn't use the word capitalist, that word sticks in Americans' throats. They can't quite get it out, which is why I say it so often. So, if the private sector can't provide work to the millions of Americans who ask only to have a job, then of course, as if it were self-evident, I, as president, have to do that. And between 1934 and 1941, he created and filled 15 million jobs in the United States, which the government paid for. They paid the salaries. Some of you visit the national parks. Many of those were built by those people, and so on. And where did he get the money? Because this is the best part. He taxed corporations and the rich. I got to say it again. In an American audience, most of you will pretend you didn't hear what I said. He taxed corporations and the rich. A lot. That's where the money came from. Because that's where the money always is to solve these social problems. You know it, I know it, and unfortunately, they know it. But he did. Let me give you just a couple of examples. The top income tax bracket that Roosevelt was in favor of. Well, let's deal with the top he ever asked for. State of the Union message, 1944. We're in a war. In a war. He sends a message, Roosevelt, president, to the Congress. I propose that the top bracket, the top income tax rate on the richest people be, ready? 100%. See, you're laughing because you don't know your own history. What does that mean? Here's what it means. Every dollar over $25,000 a year, that was the cutoff then, that would be about $380,000, $390,000 a year now. Every dollar over $25,000 you get, and you don't get. We get it. 100%. We take every dollar. The president proposed a maximum income. That's what that means. The maximum income you get is 25. And if you get more than that, you ain't getting it. He sent the message. The Republicans, doing what the Republicans are supposed to, went ballistic. yelling, screaming, until a compromise was reached between the Republicans and the Democrats, which they then sent to the president, who signed it, making the top bracket in 1944 94%. Every dollar over 25 you got to keep 6 cents, and the other 94 cents went to the government of the United States. Republicans supported it, Democrats supported it. Even after Roosevelt died, for the next 20 years, the top bracket's within the 90%, 91, 92, and so on. Even in the 1970s, it was in the 70%. What is it today? 39%. That's a tax cut. That's a tax cut no working class person could imagine, let alone enjoy. We've taxed the rich. Here's another statistic for you. In 1945, end of the war, for every dollar in income tax that the federal government earned by taxing individuals, it got $1.50 in taxing corporations. So the total take from corporations was 50% more than the total take from individuals. Today, the same proportion, for every dollar taxed in individuals, the corporations pay 25 cents. That's where it is. Oh, that's a tax cut. That is a wonderful tax cut. Not for you, but for them. The last 50 years have been then what? Rolling back the tax on corporations and shifting it to individuals. And rolling back the tax on rich individuals and putting it instead on all of you. So on behalf of corporations and the rich, I want to say to all of you, thank you. Very kind of you.